Hey, quick disclaimer, this is going to be for educational and entertainment purposes only. There's going to be no tutorial on how to do what you see in this video, and I highly encourage you all to pick up a physical or digital copy of Tears of the Kingdom. Thank you so much. Hey, welcome to another episode of an ongoing series where we basically take the camera anywhere we want to try to find secrets and new discoveries to some of our favorite games. And oh my goodness, Tears of the Kingdom, what a game. This title is massive, which means I have a ton of stuff to show you guys out of bounds without even going close to the end game. So if you're worried about spoilers, don't be. The only thing I will say is that I do check out the Zoro domain, so if you haven't experienced that yet, I'm going to put that at the end of the video and I'll make it pretty obvious when that's about to happen. Otherwise, it's just very general stuff, so enjoy a fun little companion video to your experience with the game so far. Let's get into it. I want to start off by talking about something really fun and interesting. It's the first cutscene you see when you're just about to leave the tutorial island. Link hands over the Master Sword to Zelda, and the whole thing kind of plays out pretty seamlessly. But taking the camera out of bounds and showing you what's going on beneath the ground can show you that the Zelda model is already lying in wait, and that her wrists are kind of like tied to something else completely, giving her a bit of like a sleepwalking or zombie effect to how her arms are positioned. And then she slowly rises into frame, allowing her to be in her scene and grab the sword herself. And as it turns out, no, we don't go anywhere at all. We're staying in the exact same spot. In fact, for a brief moment while we have Zelda in frame, you can also see that they stored Link underneath the ground as well. And although you've already been seeing it on the screen, I wanted to take an emphasis on the fact that the particle effect of the Master Sword getting transported to Zelda gets stretched out in real time. And so panning the camera really far out can show you just how massive this effect is. And then we had a viewer request where the viewer wanted to know what happens to the Zelda model as it's shown in this scene here, because she rises into the sky and it kind of cuts off before you can even see what's going on. Well, it's not all that special. The model just sort of disappears and turns into a sprinkle or fairy dust or a twinkle, if you will. And it does go quite a bit of a distance before it finally disappears. And then one of the things I really wanted to know about was the ascension ability, because seeing Link go through the environment in real time and have this effect happen, I'm wondering what exactly happens to the environment itself. And it turns out that the entire environment gets culled out during this time, and Link is trapped inside of a prism that shows that color that shows up behind the effect that you can see here. Only by taking it at certain angles are you even able to tell that it's a cube, which is really interesting. Hey, real quick, I'm on camera for a rare moment to talk about my favorite sponsor, which is Bai. Now, why am I talking about Bai and why is it my favorite sponsor? Well, it's because I use them all the time. No joke, before they approached me to do a sponsor for this particular video, I was already using the website to buy a Super Mario RPG piece of merch. So it's like a little keychain with Mario. It's pretty cool looking. I'm going to put it on the screen right now. And I wouldn't have been able to do that without Bai, because that product doesn't exist anywhere on eBay or any other US auction sites, so I had to get it through a Japanese auction site. And in order to pull that off, Bai managed to convert my US dollars into yen so that it can pay off the seller. And also, most sellers on Japanese auction sites only ship domestically, meaning that they would never ship it out to the US, but thanks to Bai, they ship it out to their warehouse, which is in Japan, and then they ship it from the warehouse to my house. So pretty soon I'm gonna have this sweet product, and yeah, I mean, I couldn't have been able to do it without Bai. Love these guys. And one little tip from one fan to maybe another, if you're gonna use Bai, I highly recommend you type in a game title that you liked from the Super Nintendo or Nintendo 64 era or even GameCube era, and just type in like action figure or plush and just see what pops up, because there's so much Japanese exclusive merch for so many games in the past that the US never got. It's really fun and interesting, and I've definitely gotten some really cool stuff as a result of just doing a little bit of browsing. Anyways, if you're interested, there is a 10% off coupon that's in the video description down below. I highly recommend it. Again, love you, Bai. Can't wait to work with you again soon. And for the rest of you, on with the show. Thank you so much. And then moving on from there, of course, the other question is, what does it look like when you're trying to dive down into the underground depths? You got this massive tunnel here when you're already above ground, and it's while you're moving through this tunnel that the game shifts from loading out the above ground area and loading in the underground depth. which is very different from how it works in the areas that are in the sky, because the surface of Hyrule is loaded in at all times. Now granted, whenever I took the camera out to this area before moving there, everything stays in a low level of detail. So there may in fact be some sort of loading going on here, despite the fact that it all looks so seamless. Because if I was to go all over the map while on the surface, you would see that all the level of detail just sort of loads in as I move the camera around. And a moment ago, we were talking about the underground depths, and even when you light it up, there's still a darkness that sort of surrounds the area. Granted, you can see a lot better for where you need to go, but if you look straight up, it's pitch black still. So thanks to Bidzilla, we were able to remove all of the effects that makes this area look so dark. And when you do that, you can see that there is a ceiling to this area with its own set of textures and everything. The underground depths looks a heck of a lot different when you can see everything that the area has to show. And another fun little environmental thing that I wanted to show you guys is when you first go underground for the water temple, quote-unquote water temple at least, the first waterfall that you see does have an end to it. If you take the camera out of bounds, you can see that there's a stream of water that's resting on nothing before it becomes a waterfall, which is really funny. But also a fun little fact, when you are traveling underground after you go through that whirlpool, the entire world is still loaded in above the surface. Taking a camera here, we'll show you that very same whirlpool that we were just talking about, which is super impressive. And then speaking of water below the surface, anyone who hasn't seen my Breath of the Wild episode might be surprised about what you're about to see here. The way that the developers made this world was they would push and pull the environment as well as the water. So there's always a constant water layer and always a constant land layer, which means that if you ever take the camera below the surface, you will most likely see the water hiding somewhere underneath, making a secret world of water that I'm sure would be lovely for any aquatic creature. And one of the cool things that's going on with these shrines now is that they show you a preview of what's going to be inside the shrine. Now, how did they pull that off? Well, you can't find this environment anywhere on the map. It's likely culled out, but the game uses a projection of this area and then sort of maps it to this geometry that's housed inside these shrines. So taking the camera inside of the shrine itself will break the illusion for you and can kind of show you where the projection starts and ends. And how about when you're inside the shrines? What does it look like when we pan the camera out? Well, it's different from Breath of the Wild, so you end up seeing something entirely different. It's very simplistic out of bounds, and no, you cannot find the overworld map anywhere at this point in time. You're basically loaded into a separate zone. But now we're moving on to the title screen of the game. Did you know that this is not a HUD element, but in fact a fully 3D environment? And by tilting the camera around, you can see floors and other walls that normally you would never ever get to see. I'm trying to get a lighting mod so that I can show you just how much of this environment you can see. This is a bit of an editorial note. If you are hearing this message right now, that means that we did get that lighting mod, and you can see just how much there is to see here. Otherwise, it would be caked in darkness. And now let's start looking inside of models. The first one's not the most exciting, but still I wanted to show you guys that there is a texture in here that's really difficult to see, and it actually spins around. So while not utterly fascinating, it's still something that you normally don't get a chance to see. Moving on, the King Zora here normally has his feet submerged underneath the water, but if you take the camera underneath, you can see that he's got feet and even includes some webbing as well as a toenail. Wanted to show you how some of the eyes work in this game. It goes all across the board, but with Beetle, it's sort of like another toenail for an eye. There's a bit of a curvature to it, but it's not fully spherical, and it's not modeled on all sides, which I guess a toenail is, my bad. We got this dispenser here. It looks like the orbs are actually coming out of the dome, but it's not actually. If we take the camera inside this device, you can see where all your capsules get loaded in, and then start dropping from this spot. And now we're moving on to the Zora area of the game, and if you haven't played this part yet, you're welcome to stop the video now, but if you're willing to watch, there's some really interesting stuff here. First of which being that in this cutscene, the lighting changes completely, and there's a little bit of an effect on the camera lens, and what's funny is that if you take the camera out, you can see that this effect is in fact a giant sphere that encapsulates the player. And in fact, that's not the only time that they do this. When they want the lighting to be a little more hazy, this haze effect is like a cylinder shape and just follows Link around wherever he walks. And then we got Muktarok here, and there's a lot to talk about with this boss alone, which makes me excited to eventually cover the other bosses in the future. See, with Muktarok, he's just sort of like an Octorok that uses a sludgy construct that's in the shape of a shark. And while he's inside the shark, he's literally inside the shark. It was really difficult to get any footage of this because he's constantly moving, but slowing down the footage here will show you that his model is in fact inside the shark. Now, what about when you destroy the shark and he has to run around without it? Where's the shark go? Well, chances are the character model is called out, but once he summons the shark again, you can see the exact moment in which the shark loads back in. And then once you beat the boss, you get a cutscene that takes you over into this new area with the ancestor. There's a couple of things I wanted to talk about. The first of which being that, yes, while you can't see the overworld map while this cutscene's going on, it is in fact in the overworld map. And you can figure this out by seeing the waterfalls that were supposed to be near the boss fight still loaded in, which means that it's just likely that the entire overworld map is just called out while this cutscene goes on. And really cool, when I took the camera inside this ancestor's helmet, the ancestor had a face, eyes, mouth, everything. And while I thought that this might just be a reused model of Mipha, I'm led to believe that that's not the case, because the eyes, though yellow just like Mipha, do have a little bit of a difference here in that they both have yellow eyes, but Mipha's eyes just have a straight yellow, whereas this model has a speckle of blue or purple, it's hard to tell with the lighting, that are inside the yellow of those eyes as well. And that's it. That's all I got for now. If you want to see more Out of Bounds content, I recommend starting with the Breath of the Wild episode. Got a whole playlist here though, so feel free to pick and choose any episode you want to check out. Hope I get to see you guys again in the future, and take care.